It's not enough nowadays just to save in a retirement account and forget about it and then come back to it 30 years later and say, now I'm going to start to withdraw. You're missing out a huge range of possibilities that revolve around taxes and tax planning.
If the market headlines have been stressing you out lately, don't worry, you're definitely not alone on that one. We're going to focus on what you can control and why that's usually more than you actually think. Hello, and welcome to the Money on Your Mind podcast from Edelman Financial Engines. I'm Michael Liersch, a behavioral scientist, financial planner, and the chief planning officer at EFE. Thanks for joining us for a conversation about how people are feeling about money, what they're wrestling with, and how financial planning can help you straighten things out. Today, we're talking with Matt Hickes, an EFE financial planner. Matt, welcome to the show. Really glad to have you on.
Hey, Michael, thank you for the introduction. I'm really excited to be here.
So, Matt, I know you. I know our listeners don't, but I want to describe a little bit about Matt. So, Matt's been in the business for a couple decades, been serving clients, loves helping people, has 4 kids. He didn't want me to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Like one of our former guests, Ron from an earlier podcast. Ron's from San Diego. Ironically enough, Matt's from Chicago, and he also married his high school sweetheart, just like kind of me, which is more of my college sweetheart. So with all that said, Matt, I kind of revealed something you didn't necessarily want me to share, but here we go. So Matt, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into it?
Hey, I once again appreciate it, Michael, and I'm excited to be here. Like you pointed out, married, been doing this for 20 years, passionate about helping people. Got 4 kids, so we're busy. I can't think of the last time I had a weekend where I had to make a decision about what to do because it's already planned out for you. That's one of the things I like about having kids is sometimes I get to turn that brain off and get other people to tell me what to do.
I could definitely relate to that, Matt, for sure. I'm actually dealing with that right now. So we both have that in common for sure. And I'm sure a lot of our clients and a lot of our listeners and people who are interested in understanding what you have to share have that going on in their lives, whether it's children, grandchildren, family members. So with all of that in mind, what's going on? What are your clients saying to you?
Yeah, one of the things I'm getting a lot of questions about today is around Roth conversions. Um, Clients, I believe, are starting to see this more, whether it's in the mainstream news or in financial press, and it can be a pretty big deal. But like all that I mentioned before, it comes with a lot of questions. What is a Roth conversion, and is it
Or what
appropriate?
is a Roth
Yeah,
IRA to
what is a
begin with?
Roth? Correct.
So why do you think this tax idea of paying taxes now versus later is coming up right now with your clients? What do you think's going on here? And with this Roth conversion idea, and then you can get into more what that is, but why is it coming up right now with your clients?
Great question. I think there's a couple things going on. The first is Roths have existed for a while now. 10, 15 years ago, we were still kind of at the beginning of when a Roth IRA or a Roth 401k was even available, kind of in those baby. If you're looking at the lifestyle of something, it was a toddler. And now we're coming on where Roth is graduated high school and in college. They've existed for more than 20 plus years now as part of their tax code. So when something is around longer and the promises have been kept, then people become more aware and more accustomed and more likely to want to hear or possibly use it.
Great.
Number two, clients may be forced to start using and putting money into a Roth. Part of the changes that happened last year with the one big beautiful bill was for clients that are above age 50 and making potential catch up contributions to their 401k, their TSP. Previously, those catch up contributions could go to the pre tax version of their 401k if they elected to. Well, now, as part of the tax law changes, those catch up contributions are no longer eligible for going to the pre tax. They have to
So
go
it
to an
forces
active.
the conversation. Yeah,
Exactly. So
got
they're
it.
kind of forcing people's hands and they need to say, I need to know more about this because I have to do it now. And the other thing is kind of gets back to what we mentioned earlier, just tax liability. People for 20 years have said, Matt, I feel like my taxes are going to go up. It's going to happen. I've seen nothing but them go down. It's going to reverse and go up at some point. And maybe clients will be right. Maybe it'll be wrong. Maybe it'll move sideways. But there is just seemingly a general concern that my tax liability is going to go up, not go down.
Understood, especially with, the narrative around increasing national debt and how we're gonna serve that, Social Security solvency, things like that, Matt. I get that hypothesis, could, come to fruition, but to your point, like market movements, no one really knows what's gonna happen next.
100%. Correct. Your guess is as good as mine.
Yes, yes. So for those who say, okay, I have a strong point of view here. I want to lean into Roth either from the kind of forced necessity of it, to your point on catch-up contributions, or from the more general narrative that you laid out. I have a particular point of view on the future and how I want to manage to that. What happens next?
Yeah. So the first thing I typically want to make an analysis of with clients is, what are you going to give up or what are you going to gain? If you have money that's currently going to your pre-tax 401k or you're making a traditional IRA contribution and you're receiving a tax deduction for that, if you decrease what you're doing there and have it instead go to the Roth, you're going to give up some tax benefits because of that. So part of that analysis is understanding what you're going to give up and trying to make a determination whether or not it's worth it. And then same thing on the other side, increasing your contributions going in one of those other buckets. We know what we're giving up, but what would you potentially gain? Down the road, are you gaining a larger bucket or pool of assets that you have available to you that would be tax free when you get to retirement? And is that beneficial? And if so, why?
And a big question people have, Matt, is so if you incur the tax bill today and you put money in, let's just say a Roth IRA. On the other side of it, when you distribute the money in retirement, does that count toward your income for income tax purposes?
If done appropriately, no. Now, what do I mean by done appropriately? You've got to meet a couple stipulations that you need to follow for a Roth to make sure that the income is tax free when you make a withdrawal. The accounts need to have been open for at least 5 years for those contributions to have matured. You've got to hit age 59 and a half, or meet a number of other things that you could possibly hit to make an early distribution and it not be considered taxable income for you. So is it easy enough just to say, hey, I'm going to put some money in and then next year I can withdraw it and it's all going to be tax free? No, there are still things you need to make sure you're doing so that by the time you do get there, you do get that full weight of those contributions and the growth that you might have is tax free.
I do want to summarize a bit of what you just said. So the first is you're hearing from clients a lot around taxes. And ultimately, are they going to go up? Are they going to go down? That makes tons of sense. There's tariffs. There's a lot of economic, predictions out there, and so people want to really look at something that's more in their control, which is the tax liability they may have now or in the future. That makes perfect sense. So then a natural second piece to your point is either through necessity or through optionality. They say, is a Roth, retirement format right for me? And they want to know more. And then the third thing I hear you saying is there's quite a bit to consider and quite a lot of advice. So you want to access a professional to really navigate whether it's right for you. It's not a foregone conclusion at all. There's a lot to consider on the front end. I really like that idea of, can you afford to incur the tax liability today? Does that make sense based on, where you are from an income tax perspective? All the way on the other side of it, do you have time on your side? And ultimately, when you need the money, have you waited long enough to get the full tax benefit from those distributions? So did I get it right, Matt? Is that essentially the general narrative here?
Hit the nail on the head. Agreed completely.
Well, it was your advice, Matt. So I really appreciate it. And this is why I love talking to planners at EFE, great professionals like you. So let's move into the the second part of our format before we close, which is really to understand, something about you and your specific client interactions, like moving out of generalities around taxes and things like that. I do want to ask you, what is the biggest client mistake you are seeing today? Everyone wants to know.
The biggest mistake, generally speaking, that I see clients and just individuals that I speak with is inertia, getting in their own way, having, knowing they should do something or need to do something, but not taking the action to do that. And, I see it take a lot of different forms. I can see it take the form of an estate planning, not making an update to their will, their medical directive, their powers of attorney, for whatever reason. So just getting bogged down and not wanting to do something. And I think we can all kind of understand that one, when you're dealing with estate planning.
Complicated. Yeah.
Yeah. But it takes, more simple forms as well. I've got clients that know they should increase how much they're saving in their retirement accounts. I tell them go from 10% to 12% in your 401k this year, and we're not doing that yet. So kind of getting in our own way of not doing something that we know would benefit us long term, but thinking more short term. And thinking specifically of 529 accounts. Those are accounts designed specifically to help people save for originally higher education. Post secondary, post
Sure.
high school. And there's been a ton of changes to 529 accounts over the last dozen years. Just like everything that we feel like we deal with as financial planners, we make one set of plans and then something changes. That is certainly one of the benefits of working with a professional. We should be keeping track of those changes, letting you know, not something you need to necessarily worry as much about. But how you use or how you can use 529 accounts has changed drastically. And so just like before, it kind of brings up questions that people have. Is this the right account to now save for college? And if so, why? And if it's not the right account, what should I be doing instead? And you can start to kind of see that snowball of there's just so many questions and it can lead to so many different potential answers. You can bog yourself down and not doing anything because you get lost in the weeds.
Totally. And that makes perfect sense. And I think of 529s in particular, to your point, there was this narrative out there that there's a concern of putting too much money in it and it's locked up and I'll get a penalty if I don't pay for a child's or grandchild's or if you want to call it the beneficiary of that money, their education. But now you can roll it over into an IRA, a Roth IRA, like we were just talking
There
about,
we
right?
go. Full
Up to a
circle.
certain amount of money, right? You can change the beneficiary. You can pay for K through 12 up to a certain limit, education as well. Right, Matt? What are some other ones I'm missing that have really tried to solve that inertia problem you're highlighting?
Yeah, so you can use a 529 account, like you mentioned, for more than just college. It can be used for trade schools. It can be used now, K through 12, private schools potentially. You can rename the beneficiary. I've got multiple kids. If my oldest doesn't completely exhaust his 529 account and we don't want to use it for one of those other things you mentioned, guess what? It's getting rolled down to brother because I know brother's going to use it. And if brother doesn't use it, next brother's definitely going to use it. So, you
It's
can
like the
all.
hand-me-down clothes, right?
Mhm.
That we all
Correct.
received when we were kids. Yeah, I got it. But in a really
100%.
good way. In a really good way.
The hand-me-down 529, even
Yeah,
better.
exactly. I like that.
No
We'll
holes in
we'll
that.
coin that one. We'll coin that one, Matt. Anything else that you before we close that you wanna highlight on the 529 topic or any other topics where you're seeing a lot of inertia? Estate planning, 529s, contributing, increasing contributions or making contributions to retirement accounts. Anything else that you're seeing,
Yeah,
inertia on or pausing on?
the other big one that does kind of bring things full circle for us is just tax planning in general. It's not enough nowadays just to save in a retirement account and forget about it and then come back to it 30 years later and say, now I'm going to start to withdraw. You're missing out a huge range of possibilities that revolve around taxes and tax planning. Had you been more forethoughtful at this point going into it, you could come up with a better plan when you get to retirement about how to give yourself those assets back in a more tax efficient manner. So I think that's a big one that people are missing out on as well, just general tax planning around their retirement accounts and withdrawals when they get to retirement.
Oh, I really love that one, Matt, because it flies in the face of the old adage, which is a great transition to ask you our final question, which is in behavioral finance terms, people used to think it was great to set it and forget it. That was, the favorite adage, where, just put the money in, never look at it again until you need it. And what I hear you saying is, okay, that's interesting. However, by setting it and forgetting it, you're missing all these opportunities, tax milestones, changes in policy, law, that will give you extra benefit if you were just to regularly engage over time throughout your life and things change. To your point, you might have additional children or grandchildren. Their decisions might change to go to school or not to go to school. Your decisions might change around, ultimately how much money you might need in retirement or how much money you don't need and how else you'd want to use that money. So I really love that idea of let's not set it and forget it in a very, let's call it, stick your head in the sand sort of way. And in that, inertia, let inertia work for me kind of way. Instead, be systematic about it. Work with your professional, a great professional like you, Matt, and really set a tone for let's check in and make sure we're doing all we can, especially around taxes, which is something we can really control, our tax planning to get the most out of our money. So with that, like great advice, Matt. Let's move into the final question, which is, and I know you've touched on tax planning and things like that. So, if this is the answer, fine. But what's one thing that you think every client should do right now, or every listener should do right now? What's one thing that you would suggest?
Change how they view money. And what I mean by that is, money is a tool. It's not the end all be all. It is what you use to help you accomplish your goals, whether it's retirement, or sending a kid or multiple kids to college, or buying that very first home. I far too often see people change how they view money and loathe to spend it. They get to retirement and they form those really good habits of, I know I need to save and I'm going to save till it hurts. But then I'm now trying to convince them to do the very thing that's anathema to them, spend their money. So one big thing I wish I could impress upon everybody is just, view money as a tool. It's there to help you achieve your goals. And then once you get those goals achieved, live generously with yourself, spend the money. Don't be afraid to use it as it was intended.
Matt, I really think that's sage advice. I'm going to take it myself. I'm going to enjoy the weekend. I'm going bowling with the family and some friends, and it'll be my treat. How about that? Because I'll enjoy that. And thank you to everyone for listening. Matt, thank you for this great advice, this insight into what people are thinking about, especially what's in people's control. Because I think there's a lot of focus on what's out of our control. And I just want to thank you for all that you do.
Yeah, my pleasure. I had a great time with you today. Enjoy bowling this weekend.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for joining us today. And we'll have more money on your mind from Edelman Financial Engines for you next week. So I hope you can listen in. Until then, I'm Michael Liersch. This is Money on Your Mind. Take care. The views expressed are not necessarily those of this station. Information is believed to be reliable but is not guaranteed. This content is for educational purposes only and does not constitute investment, legal, insurance, or tax advice. It is not an offer to buy or sell any product and does not represent an endorsement of third parties. All investments have inherent risks. Consult a financial advisor before investing. Individual results may vary. The show is pre-recorded. Money on Your Mind, produced by Edelman Financial Engines and hosted by Michael Liersch.